This again is a toilet training workshop for parents and caregivers, and I'm calling it When You Gotta Go. So our objectives tonight are going to be, first of all, to recognize those toileting readiness and prerequisite skills. And then we're going to review a bunch of the different materials that are needed for the training process, talking about a variety of different methods, because there's not just one way to do this. So I'm going to cover some of the different methods that I have used over the years in doing this. I'm actually going to touch on ways you can collect and interpret data if you're kind of a numbers person, and this can help you kind of with the process as well. And then obviously some things, troubleshooting, in case it doesn't work, what can we do to help? So first things first, just for reassurance purposes, I wanted to let you all know, there's no set age or benchmark or ideal number for a starting point. I noticed we had a range of age. So if you're thinking, is it too early? Is it too late? There's not really a number out there as far as that goes. There's a difference between girls and boys. We all know that. Everyone goes at their own pace. Some people just don't go that much. And kids are smart. So just to share a couple little stories with you guys, or just kind of quick tidbits with this, I have in my time, I've had some kids catch on in literally a day or two, up through kids that seem to take so long to where we're wondering, is this even going to work? Some kids, we have stopped for a while and then just come back, and all of a sudden it's like the light bulb went on. So that's something that can happen. With the not going that much, think about our own habits. Maybe we're people that's just how our body is, and that's what happens. So our kids can do that too. Or perhaps our kids are just very busy people, and so they're very occupied, and maybe they don't want to go very much, and we have to work on that routine. And they're smart. I'm sure you guys all know that, and everybody's probably chuckling to themselves right now, like, yeah, everything I do, they find, option A, B, C, D, and E to get us through all of this. So we're going to talk about some ways to hopefully work through some of that and make successful things happen. So we're going to talk about, is your child ready? But really, you have to be ready too, because there's a lot of stuff that comes into place here. So let's try to make sure we're ready first. It does take time. So, are you ready to plot out a couple days? Maybe it's a long weekend. Maybe you do have, a spring break coming up, or especially now with everything that's going on in our world, we're not going many places. So maybe you have the extra time now to kind of hone in and do this. There is a need for consistency and follow through. So if, you are the mom or the dad or the grandma or the grandpa or whoever, are there going to be other people helping you? And are they going to be willing to be consistent and do things the exact same way that you are? It may take some money. There are materials that you have to buy and things that you have to get ready for, which we'll get into in a bit. Do you have the space for this? You were going to have a lot of the reinforcers and all the underwear and the different things. So you're going to designate that. Again, the materials, we have a nice list of things we're going to go through later. And then just kind of thinking about the mental, physical, emotional aspects of this, because we will kind of have the ups and downs and the successes and the hard times and things. So I just wanted to make sure that we review those things before we dive into the whole process. Then is your child ready? So here's where we're talking about, those prerequisite skills and looking at things and how do I know when and where and how to start. So it may actually start with some pre-training data. And what I kind of mean by that is, this isn't necessarily that formal intensive sheet with lots of numbers and things like that per se, but you may have something that you just jot down, like you're starting to jot down every time you do have to change the diaper or the pull-up, just on a piece of paper, 10, 15, 11, 15, whatever the times are in the day. That way, over a period of time, you're noticing that maybe certain times do stick out more than others. Or you notice after a lot of water or after a certain activity takes place or something like that may happen. That's going to help you to guide you through the process down the road. Some other things you may want to observe as far as these prerequisite skills and readiness are concerned. Toleration of the bathroom, just in general, toleration of the toilet. We may not realize it, but there are 5 gazillion plus factors in the day that we know can influence behavior. So just even thinking of things like the lighting and things in the bathroom and the type of towel color and, who knows, those might be factors. But just thinking about toleration of the toilet, like, is your child okay sitting on the toilet? Do we need to work on that type of process first before we can even think about toilet training? Are they exposed to that very often? What is their response to that soiled diaper or pull-up? Do they seem to have some sort of reaction? Do they want it off immediately? Do they say things and make comments about it, or do they seem to not care? Are they able to remain dry for longer periods of time? That is a good sign that they can be ready. Does your child know the difference between wet and dry? That might be something, because we'll talk about down the road here in this presentation where maybe we're rewarding dry pants and things like that. Do you need to have all of these boxes checked? No, you don't. But these are things that you may want to look for that will help you to be more successful with this process. There are some things you may also want to think about or consider. Ruling out things like dietary needs, because you are going to have to be increasing a lot of fluid. It is recommended that things like increasing salty foods or things to increase the need to have to go. So if your child does have some dietary concerns, you may want to work on those and kind of get questions answered there. If they have any medical needs, or perhaps they're have an illness recently or something like that, or there may be a medical procedure coming up, that can all play into the timing of things. Are there big routine changes happening, like maybe at school or with the family? That might be some things where it's not the right time to start something like this right now. Some additional skills to keep in mind: where does your child lie as far as dressing and undressing, and hand washing? If they cannot do these things or they struggle with these things, it's not that they have to be independent by any means, but just know that this is, there's an added step now where they're going to be pulling pants up and down. And we want to be increasing the hand washing process, obviously, because they're more involved now versus you just changing them. So something extra to think about with that. Okay, so your materials needed. List of things here, and I'm going to touch on each one individually on a slide. So we're just going to dive into the next slide and I'll explain things a little more specifically. So the first thing is underwear. Going to need several pairs, several packs, because you're going to be going through this process. And for the most part, especially at the beginning, there will be some accidents, so you'll be going through them pretty quickly. If you like to do laundry often, then okay, but I would assume many people don't. So have several pairs and packs of underwear ready. Something that can be very special with the process is maybe you have your child pick out the underwear. That involves them, that gives them some ownership. A couple kids that are on my caseload currently are like so proud to walk their underwear at school from the book bag into the bathroom, into the cubby. They just love it and they tell people what's on it. And it's just a cool thing. So that may give them some more excitement with everything. When I say minimal use of pull-ups or diapers, this is something that you want to consider with just your routine and what's going on. So you may not necessarily be doing underwear at night right away, or when your child goes to and from school, they may not be wearing underwear on the bus immediately, or perhaps you're going for a long outing somewhere. You may not be doing that then right off the bat. What you can do, if you would like to still try to be somewhat consistent, is you could wear the underwear underneath a pull-up. That way your child still feels that sensation of being wet and having the wetness close to their body, but wearing the pull-up then still prevents pants from getting wet, prevents a mess from being wherever you are and things like that. And I've had some success with parents doing that just to kind of keep teaching the process. So something to think about there. The next piece, very important part of this process as well, is reinforcement. Reinforcement, the first point I have is only for toileting success. What do I mean by that? Say you have picked out, I don't know, a special kind of candy, Skittles, for example. I'm going to use Skittles. Every time, little Johnny goes to the bathroom, we're going to use Skittles. Johnny should only then get Skittles for going to the bathroom and having those successes. It has to be something that is so super awesome and special just for toilet training. If it's something that they have access to all the time, like a certain video or a certain book or something like that, it's not going to be as exciting and special and motivating because they have access to it all the time. You know, if they do really like the iPad, maybe there's a special app on the iPad that's just for toileting, or a special video they can watch or something like that. So think about what is so super awesome and motivating that you can use for that. If you're thinking, what am I going to use? This is so hard. There is something for everyone. And I'm talking not just toileting, just outside note, everything behavior related. You can find something. Don't just think, you know, DVDs, movies, material items, candy, food, things like that. Think like special privilege, like, oh, maybe we'll drive to a special park, or maybe you can, I don't know, FaceTime grandma, or maybe you get to help mommy, you know, sweep the floor if you like sweeping so much, or anything like that. You know, just think so super creative when you're talking about reinforcement, things you wouldn't, you know, maybe you're like, this sounds crazy, but I'm going to try it. How do you know it's not going to work? You know, just try that out. Involve your child in this process as well. So maybe when you're going to the store and you're, you know, buying that underwear, hey, what do you want to earn for going, you know, pee on the toilet? What would you like to have? Or perhaps you buy a few things and you trial and error and you see how they like it, if they want it or not, you know, put the things out in front of them. Do you want this or this? This prime example, just this picture here, maybe you have an entire treasure box. So that way, each time they pick, there's something different they can choose. And that treasure box is just for toileting. There will be some questionnaires that I'm going to touch on here too, that may be helpful as well, that may guide your thinking and your process on what can I use. This is one of the examples, and this will be something that can be downloaded later. This is a questionnaire called the Reinforcement Inventory. And what this does is it kind of categorizes things, as you can see here: food items, entertainment, arts and crafts. And it kind of groups things. And then what this form of questionnaire does is helps you to gauge how often does your child engage in these types of items. That way, you know, oh my gosh, these things that are daily might be the highly motivating items, and that's what I should use because it's so super exciting to my child. But the things that are that 1 to 5 times a month, maybe not so much. And then you can hone in on, okay, they like chips, but what specific kind of chips, what brand of chips, and those types of things. So this is just, again, a guide that may help you get there. You could even go through this with your child, perhaps. If you do have a child that is verbal and able to answer questions, maybe you can say, you know, do you like candy? What kind of candy is your favorite? How much would you like to play with a special musical instrument or something like that? The next thing is liquids and snacks. When you are getting child ready to do toilet training, something that may encourage them to go more is an increase in liquid. Water, Gatorade, sports drinks, those are the primary top things to use because they're really going to hydrate you, and you may have to find that to increase success, you may have to push this a lot more. When it comes to those liquids, I've definitely had my fair share of students that don't like to drink a lot. So we may build in an added reinforcement for every so many sips you get a special reward, or every so many cups you drink, you get a special reward, or, you know, we work it in and make it exciting. Maybe there's a really cool special juice cup or water cup that we use just for the toilet training process or something. Again, think of ways to make anything and everything super exciting and motivating. When it comes to snacks, an increase in things that are salty is encouraged, because if we think about, like, when we eat a lot of pretzels, we need something to drink. So that's going to encourage one to want to drink more as well. Just something to think about there as far as the food and the drink is concerned. Other items to consider. Do you want to use your regular toilet in your bathroom, or do you want to buy one of the toilet training toilets? That can be just kind of a trial and error process. Is it something that your child is more comfortable on? Are they able to sit on the big toilet, or are they a tiny child and they need to be on the toilet training toilet? Or maybe use the potty seat and you add that somewhere. That way you can take that wherever you go and it's kind of easy that way. If you are doing this in home or school environment, what type of shoes is your child going to have on? Are they barefoot because they're at home and that's okay? Or do you keep some sort of shoes, sandals, Crocs, something that's easily rinsed off and washed? I've actually had some families put down tarp at home, and if it's primarily in the room that their child is going to be spending most of that time in. That saves carpet, that saves furniture. It works. It's easy cleanup. Not necessary, but it's just something to think about you could have. Maybe you do have a designated area of the house. So maybe you have the potty seat and you're like, you know what, we're just going to do this in the basement and we're going to be down here in the den or wherever room you call it. And this is where we're going to be. We're going to have all the exciting things. This is what's happening. Or you just end up making the bathroom the exciting place and you bring all the goods in there, which we'll get into a bit later with that. Think about your child's sensory needs. Maybe a toilet seat or a cushion is something that they need because it makes things a little more comfortable. Perhaps your child needs a footstool. A lot of occupational therapists that I've worked with say, you know, if your child's feet are dangling and not touching the ground, they need a footstool to have that balance just to make them feel more comfortable as well. So visual supports. There may be an icon that you use for requesting. So it may just be one simple icon of like a toilet or perhaps even a photo of your bathroom. It may be what we call like a sentence strip that says, I need bathroom or I want bathroom. And again, that can be the text, that can be icons via like Boardmaker or Google or clip art or something like that. Something to help encourage that requesting process. And we'll get into kind of communication too in a bit as far as why that's important and what might be used there. You may have a visual schedule. So as we get into the schedule piece, you may say, you know, breakfast, bathroom, school time, bathroom, whatever the activities are, that way your child knows when it's coming. And that can be something. And it may not have to be full day. It could just be for the morning or just a couple activities at a time. The first then, many of you that are parents and educators here, you may be familiar with this first then idea. Again, it's a little strip. First toilet, then iPad. Simple, immediate schedule versus the whole span of the day. First toilet, then snack, something like that. And it could be something that is visual, or it could be something that you express verbally. Some students I work with, even just holding up fingers work. Hey, first time for bathroom, then play outside. And that seems to work just as well. So if you're like, I don't have a printer, I don't have a laminator and Velcro, totally fine. You could create it on a dry erase board. You could draw it on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just whatever works for you. And again, that first then is something that can be posted all over the house. It can be something that is just outside the bathroom. It can be something you carry around with you. You may also want to just have a little toilet picture, toilet icon that's posted in several rooms of the house. That way it's a constant visual reminder for your child, bathroom, bathroom, bathroom. And maybe eventually they will see that and say, I need the bathroom, or they'll take the picture to you or something like that. Anything to encourage that behavior is helpful. You may be familiar with social stories or social narratives. There may be a story out there that says, you know, explains the entire process. Johnny is learning how to use the restroom. When the timer goes off, he will walk into the restroom with mommy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, whoever the person is. Johnny will sit down on the toilet. When Johnny goes to the bathroom, Johnny earns a special reward and everyone will be so happy. There are tons of things out there, so do not reinvent the wheel when it comes to that. You can find plenty there, and I'm happy to guide you with that as well. Okay, so we have gotten our materials together. We've determined we're ready. We're gonna go and we're gonna do this thing. So there are a couple different toileting methods that you may try. And so what I'm gonna do is explain each of those and kind of talk about what child might this be best for, what are some things to look out for, what are the tips here. So the first method is what I call the essentials. This is where you are just taking your child at those essential times. So when they wake up in the morning, perhaps before and after all the meals throughout the day, maybe at bath time and at bedtime. That might be when a lot of us go, so it's just routine for everybody and it works. This could be good for the child that maybe doesn't urinate super frequently or have BMs all that often. Or again, the child that might be already used to or exposed to a schedule like this, because this is when everybody in the family just goes, or this is how it works for the school environment, for example. So again, this is called the essentials. The second method I'm calling right place at the right time. This one involves a little bit more of that baseline data that I was talking about earlier. So finding out if there is a trend. So after you've kind of taken that, that prep data, that baseline data, and you're finding, okay, it's at certain times of the day when I tend to be changing that pull-up or that diaper, maybe that is when you start to take that child, or just before that. You kind of want to jump start it a little bit so they're already on the toilet and you're able to catch it. That's kind of the idea here. You may also want to take note of the places your child goes to. What I mean by that is some kids may go to a corner of a room, and that's where you see them suddenly get so quiet, like behind the little train table in the living room or something like that. Or they always go up to their bedroom, or you always see them, sit in a certain chair or suddenly have such and such behavior, and you notice that that's, oh, they must be going right now. With any of the methods, really, that's something to notice, but especially here, because you're trying to trigger those right place at the right time ideas. So that's a helpful piece to keep in mind. The third method that I have is what I call bathroom boot camp. This is fairly intensive. This is literally setting up camp in the bathroom, everything. All of your underwear, you have the reinforcers, you have things that keep your child occupied and entertained, like books, the iPad. If you have, I don't know if people still have like the portable DVD players, anything you can, music, etc. This is where the child actually starts off, at least the first 2 days, they're on that toilet all day long. Get up for some stretching, get up for some wiggling, things like that. Get up for meals if you'd like to do that. But the idea here is to hone in on being in the bathroom to hopefully eliminate any accidents from really happening, other than maybe those times that they, get up to go eat and things like that. Get them used to the bathroom, used to what it's for. And then if they're sitting on the toilet, they might be distracted by looking at a book and they just suddenly go and have a success. So that's kind of the idea there and why that happens. Brief breaks following successes on the toilet or at meal times. You don't want to eat in the bathroom, makes sense. This is best for the child that can and will sit for long periods of time, or for the child that may have behaviors with transitions. So anytime there is an activity transition, the child struggles. So if you, don't want to have them on a schedule where they're getting on and off the toilet very frequently, this may be something for them. So they're just there, they're ready. We don't have to keep moving back and forth. And then the fourth method is called on again, off again. This is an interval schedule. So this is one that is a bit more rigid. It is more routine. It can start so intensive as going every 5 minutes, where every time that timer goes off, we go to the toilet, we sit for 2 minutes, and then slowly increase that by 5-minute intervals. Here's kind of the criteria or rule of thumb that I've used here is at least one success that day and accident-free for 2 consecutive days before you move up to the next interval. This is just to increase consistency and just show it's not like a by chance thing and they're really learning the process. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this every 5 minutes? You don't have to start that intensive. You could say maybe if it's 10, 15, 20, if you think that that's fine as well. But the idea with this is the more frequently you expose to this situation and to this skill, the more likely your child is to learn that pattern and to learn that behavior. We do that with academics. We do that with other self-help routines. Any skill that even we learn, we know we learn best by repetition. So that's the idea here is more frequent exposure hopefully increases the chance of learning that more easily. And then ideally, by the time you reach about that 30-minute interval, you can jump then the intervals by like 15 minutes. Because you know at that point you can probably hold it pretty long. And so you don't have to go every 5 minutes in that sense. And the idea too is just to catch them more successful and to get that reinforcement coming more frequently too. One suggestion is to remain in or near the bathroom until the interval reaches at least 15 minutes. Reason being because you are transitioning so frequently, that way you can be closer to, or you can catch accidents from happening. Like as soon as you start to notice them going, you're closer to the bathroom, so you can hopefully catch them and they can still finish going on the toilet. This is probably the most intensive because it involves you sticking to such a schedule. But this is best for that child that needs that repetition to get the concept. So which one do you use? You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, do I, flip a coin? How do I pick this? Is it trial and error? What's going on here? This depends on you and your team. Is it just you? Is it the whole family helping? Are you an educator at school where it's you and your classroom aides and assistants all doing it together? You kind of have to look at the feasibility factor for you and kind of the timing of what's going on. I did focus on what type of child might this be best for, so hopefully that helps you. The trial and error piece, maybe you do start with the super intensive schedule and you realize this transition thing isn't working, we need to spread this out a bit more. Or you start with I'm only going to take them at essential times and I'm noticing they're having accidents. It's okay to change your routine as you're going through the process to see what works. It's also good to look at the data, and we're going to talk about that here shortly, but because of what your data, your little anecdotal notes are showing, that may guide you and help you too as well. So as I mentioned, talking about data, why do we do this? Why is it important? Even myself as a behavior analyst, I will say that it is hard to consistently stick to that because you're like, oh my gosh, I have this piece of paper and I may have this clipboard and it's time consuming, but guess what? After you look at it, after some time, you're like, oh, this actually is really helpful and it's showing me progress, or it's showing me where I can make things better next time. It helps to recognize those patterns and trends. So I mentioned a little before, is it a certain time of day when we're having more success or more accidents? Are there certain things happening that encourage more of these things to happen? Are there certain people that tend to encourage more success with toileting? Do I jot down the types of snacks my child is eating, or the types of Gatorade that seems to make them want to drink more? Anything you can think of that could be a factor could be helpful to write down. I'm somebody that's very detail oriented, so that might be you as well. Recognizing again that success or failure. What's good? Is the morning more successful? Is the afternoon more successful? Or what times are worse and what can we work on there? Then it helps us to troubleshoot or modify our training. So if we're noticing a lot of accidents, then maybe we need to take a look at that and what's going on. Are we drinking too much? Do we need to increase drinking to increase success? Should we back the schedule up and go more frequently and try to catch things better there? Any type of thing will hopefully give us a trend and we can find something from there to make more successful. So here is an example of a toilet training data sheet that I have created in my time doing this. Again, this is something that can be downloaded for later use. You don't have to have something as formal as this. Again, you can just use a piece of paper, jot things down if that's something you want to track. Is data necessary and mandatory? No, but it is helpful. So what I have here is just time. So time that they were taken. The plus is obviously a success. The minus, nothing happened. A is for accident. So if your child, before you even went to the bathroom, has an accident, jot that down and what the time was. Things that might go in that notes section could be what type of, what activity was taking place when they had the accident. What was used for a reward and how they reacted to it. If they went a lot all of a sudden and that was a really big deal, maybe jotting that down. Where they were, who was involved. Again, anything you can think of that might be helpful for you, jot that down. There's never too much information. So always lean towards that. what do we do with all of this data, and kind of where do we go from here if we're using that? We're constantly looking at that time of day. We may also look at the length of time between successes or accidents. Are they having that elimination every hour on the hour, every 2 hours? How long between drinking water do they then have a success or an accident? Like, what is the time frame? How long between eating something and having a success or an accident? Is it, 5 minutes after a meal? Is it an hour after a meal? Are there certain activities and events that are causing a success or an accident? Kind of going back a few slides, do I notice that when I let them go play in the room and they're by the train table, that's when they have an accident? Maybe we need to kind of figure that out or monitor them more closely when they're there. Are there more successes with certain people? That could be the case. Maybe, I don't know, brother, sister, somebody who does some silly song and dance when we go to the bathroom and they're very motivated by that. So now you involve them in that process more frequently. Perhaps there are certain toilets or locations. Maybe the upstairs bathroom is better for some reason, or the downstairs one, or, the special potty seat makes things more exciting. So that's more successful. As far as carrying it out, how will you communicate to the child it's time to go? You always want to be able to tell them time for bathroom or something like that, instead of just taking their hand and dragging them into the bathroom. So it may be via a timer. If you are doing the scheduled system, that option, you may literally just have like a $1 kitchen timer or a timer on your phone or something like that that goes off at each of those intervals, or you set an alarm. And that can be through any of the methods. You can set your alarm for, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever those times are throughout the day. And those timers are good for us to remember too. So not only does it signal your child, oh, timer means bathroom, but that reminds us to take them, and that reminds us to have the rewards ready and all those types of things. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but the visual schedule. So you may write in, lunch, bathroom, recess, bathroom, book, bathroom, whatever your schedule is. Any type of schedule is helpful, or that first then statement. When it comes to verbal communication, this is where you are determining with your family and your team, what am I telling my child? Am I saying it's time for potty, time for the bathroom, let's go to the bathroom? What is your verbiage that you are using? Because it's helpful that that is very consistent. You may have other types of prompting. So maybe you are just saying, hey, time for the bathroom, and you point towards the bathroom, and that's helpful to get them there. Maybe you show them that toilet picture. Maybe you pick up that special bag of chips that's going to be the reward, and you say, let's go earn chips. Come on, let's go to the bathroom. And you make it this exciting thing. Maybe it's just kind of a fun journey towards the bathroom, and we're doing some sort of dance and song and make up a potty song as we go. Whatever you can do to make it encouraging and exciting and a great process is helpful. How will the child communicate? When you are doing the toilet training, you may also prompt them to say, time for bathroom, or I need bathroom, or something like that. If your child is nonverbal, maybe they use their communication device and you have a toilet icon that's on that device, or a toilet button that's on that device. Maybe you have that toilet picture in a central location and you prompt them to go get that picture before you go into the bathroom, or something like that. Honor all requests. So your child may start to go get that picture independently, or they may go to their device and push that toilet button, or they may tell you bathroom or potty or whatever they may say. When they do that on their own, take them. Even if you just went 2 seconds ago, this helps them to learn, when I ask, I go, and then things happen. So always honor those requests. Even if they don't go, say, I'm glad you asked, thanks for trying. Some sort of encouragement there to encourage that independent communication. When your child has a success, this is the great, fun, exciting stuff. Reinforce that so heavily. Deliver the food or the item, or give them access to the activity as soon as you possibly can following that success. You probably want to make sure they're, redressed and their hands are washed and things like that, but have it ready, have it easily available, because that frequent and immediate connection between the behavior and the reinforcer is what builds that likelihood that it will happen again. Use behavior-specific verbal praise. What I mean by that is, oh my gosh, you went to the bathroom and I am so happy. You are such a big boy. You are such an awesome girl. I love this. You know, anything to make it so exciting. Again, make a song, make a cheer, whatever you do. Going beyond just the good job, or oh, here you go, or something like that. You know, vary it. Try different things all the time, see what works. And then you would fade this over time with more success. So you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I have to give them something every single time they go. Well, at first, yes. Again, it's what's going to make it more likely for them to keep going. It makes it more encouraging, more exciting of a process. And then eventually, maybe it's every other time they go, every 3 to 4 to 5 times they go. Then maybe you build to, let's fill up, 5 stars on our sticker chart and then we get to go, or something like that. So there's kind of a little reward that builds up to the big reward. So anyway, again, you can make it super exciting. And let me just kind of reiterate that there is something for everyone. So you may have to change that process. Your child may change their mind and say, you know what, I don't want books anymore. I want to earn chips now. Okay, cool. Let's change the reward and see if maybe this is more exciting at this point. What are some things that could be considered other successes? I mentioned way back in the beginning, learning whether, we have wet pants or dry pants and how that affects things. I have done what's called dry pants checks with students, where periodically between times going, we may just say like, hey, let's see if we have dry pants right now, or whatever your verbiage again may be. Periodically check and say, oh my gosh, dry pants, you're such a big boy. This is awesome. Celebration, a little reward, something like that. Maybe it's a star sticker, even just a high five. Good job. I love how you have nice dry pants. Anything like that to encourage that part of the behavior. What happens when they have an accident then? Because we know that that is bound to happen. Be firm, but not mean with the verbal. So what I mean by that is, and this may affect some kids may not need this statement. So this is just an option. It's not mandatory part of the process. You may say, you need to pee in the toilet. Big girls pee in the potty, or something like that, and kind of give that firm, or you have that discussion with them, because they may be a little more grossed out now that their underwear is like, ew, yeah, that's gross, or whatever they say, and kind of talk with them on that. Have them change their clothes. So when you were doing diapers and pull-ups and things like that, you were probably a big part of that process. Now have your child be part of that. Have them pull their pants down. Have them put them in the hamper or the plastic bag or whatever you're doing. Have them wipe themselves or start to wipe themselves, and maybe you help. Have them clean up the mess. Maybe they get a wipe and they help clean the floor a little bit, or they wipe off the chair or something like that. What that does is that involves them more in the process. And it's not meant to be like a mean or punitive thing or anything like that. But the idea here is, again, to then encourage like, oh, maybe I do want to have more success on the toilet because this part isn't so fun. And I'd rather the party and the reinforcement, and I don't like this gross wet pants, and now we got to change, and it's just more taxing, and I'd rather just be successful. So it's not this part of the process. Troubleshooting, what if, right? What if it doesn't work? What do we do now? We may make changes to the schedule. Maybe you are taking them too frequently and you're noticing that that's causing issue, or maybe we need to take them more. And that's okay. You can always change that, modify the schedule. If you have to take steps back, that's fine. You may have to just take a break from it altogether and wait a while and try again. I've done that with plenty of students where you said, you know what, for some reason, things aren't clicking here. So we're just going to wait a little bit, take a break. And sometimes that light bulb just goes on and the child just decided to start going. That's possible. I've mentioned it a little before, but reinforcement is something I love to talk about. Varying the reinforcement. Preferences change, right? We all know that. What worked today may not work tomorrow. There's always a different cartoon. There's always a different favorite food. There's a new song that's out. There's a different video on YouTube. something is always changing. So your child's preferences are going to change. So having plenty of options, even checking in with them. Hey, do you still like earning this car? Cool. If not, what else would you like to earn? Or maybe you just randomly pick up something that you found and you're like, hey, do you want to try this for peeing on the potty today? Cool. That's awesome. That's what makes it exciting and more hopeful that things will be more successful. You may change up and modify the visual supports. Maybe you had that board maker icon or that clip art icon of the toilet, but maybe you realize maybe my child responds better to an actual photograph. So you take a picture of your bathroom so it's more specific to them. Maybe you take a picture of them on the toilet. So you're like, oh, that's me. That's really cool. And you modify those visual supports for them. Even in a social story, I have created a social story with Dora the Explorer learning to go to the bathroom because the child was very motivated by Dora going to the bathroom and he loved Dora and he wanted to read about Dora. So that's what we did. The location may be modified. So maybe you're finding that, you know what, this one's not working. We're going to go to this bathroom instead, and try that out and see if that works. The big question comes up about the standing versus sitting. Maybe you try that, or maybe the child, I've actually had children that sit facing the back of the toilet because for some reason that's more comfortable. So that can be something that you're trialing out as well. You may reevaluate the diet. So changing types of food or liquid intake throughout the day. Like what could we try here? Could we try a little bit of flavoring in the water to encourage that? Do we need to change some of the food? Methods for getting more food or liquid intake. I think I mentioned before the type of cup they're drinking from or the straw that they're using, or maybe you're even just trying like popsicles to get liquid in somehow, you know, or something like that. If you're really noticing that there's a tough issue with liquids and taking that in and certain foods to encourage going, or maybe your child's having some discomfort or some other things, that may be more of a where you talk to the doctor. So I'm not going to kind of, you know, I'm not a doctor myself, so I'm not going to get in there. But if you're realizing that there's a constant struggle, that may be something that you have to talk to them about. This is more of a long list of things, but these are literally all things that I have tried, because if you want to be successful, you're going to try anything. Get creative. Running water, run the water from the sink while they're sitting on the toilet. You know, we've heard sometimes you hear running water and it makes you have to go to the bathroom. Putting their hands in warm water. For some reason, there's some sort of sensory thing that goes on that makes you have to go when that happens. Maybe you have like machines or sounds that play like waterfall sounds or a running river or something like that. We all know when we're tickly, we get squirmy, you may be more likely to have to go, especially if you're full of liquid. I have actually tried with students having them sit on the toilet with their pull-up or underwear on. They're not so comfortable to take that pull-up off yet, but they will go in the pull-up. So we sit them on the toilet with it on. I have cut slits in a pull-up because then maybe they will just go through the pull-up and it's kind of a surprise. Putting Cheerios or other items in the toilet they can aim for. Maybe, you know, some of you remember doing that growing up for yourself. I don't know. Special toilets, toilet seats, again, making things more sensory, more comfortable. There are various toilet training apps out there. Everything has an app nowadays. So there's little apps, games, videos. There are toilet training dolls, believe it or not, that you can use. Like Scotty Potty, I think is what one of them's called. There's underwear under a pull-up. I think I mentioned that before. There are toileting alarms. What I mean by this is there is a way that there's like a little device that kind of clips into the underwear, and then it is hooked up to something that kind of hangs in the pocket or on the belt loop, that when it senses that the underwear is wet, a little beep or some sort of alarm will go off to signal you to try to go catch them and get them to the toilet so they can finish going in the toilet. That can be something obviously to consider if your child is sound sensitive. It may not be very wonderful for that. It's not like super loud like a smoke alarm, but it's just not pleasant. You may take the child into the bathroom and have them watch you go. That way they see what happens. They see the process. They see what's going on. Maybe you or siblings or others get rewards with a toileting success. I know it sounds kind of silly, but actually the first child that I did work with, we were having some trouble We thought, what else could we try? And the mom said, what if I give you a dum-dum sucker when you come out of the bathroom? And I said, okay. And we started doing that. Every time we would go to the bathroom, we would get a sucker and he would watch us and request dum-dum. And we would say, you go to the bathroom, then you get a sucker. And it helped. I wouldn't say that was the main thing, but that was something we tried. And if your child sees the motivation and sees what happens when other people do it, that may work. What about BM training? Because obviously that's another part of the process. Generally, that's something that comes after the child is urination trained, but sometimes it just ends up happening by chance at the same time. Like the urination training, you may also look at patterns and trends with this. Does your child typically have a BM in the morning? Are they typically in the afternoon? Is it always after a certain meal? Again, these are probably ones that, if they just happen once or twice a day or something, might be easier to get the pattern here and see what's going on. What do you do with that? There are obviously different foods and drinks that are needed, perhaps foods high in fiber to encourage going, maybe other types of juices and things like that. You may want a different or more highly preferred reinforcer because this is more difficult process. So you may have something for peeing on the toilet and you may have something for BM on the toilet. Once you've kind of found out when their trigger times or typical times are that they go, you may take them around or just before that time and have them, or when they've eaten foods that typically make them go. There's typically a longer sitting period. So like with urination, you're probably going to have them sitting maybe 2 to 3 minutes at a time just to see if they have that chance they may go. But with the BM training, you're going to have them sit for at least a good 5 minutes just to really see if you can open up that window of opportunity and get them to be able to go. What about troubleshooting here? If there are some difficulties with BM training, I would suggest talking to your doctor on this one because maybe there are additional things that can be prescribed or recommended that encourage the BM process to happen more easily. I know with many students on my caseload, there are different dietary and digestive issues that occur, so that may be something that the doctor could help more with. What about nighttime toilet training? When do we get to the being dry throughout the night idea and how do we make that successful? Generally, that is something that comes after the child gets used to the daytime routine and or can stay dry for several hours at a time. Or if you kind of know a pattern too of they always seem to be waking up at 3 a.m. and they are wet and I'm notified by that because they're crying or they come get me or I check on them and they're wet or I notice they're awake and when I go in they're wet. Maybe this is where you kind of know that time. So perhaps you set an alarm and you say, guess what? I'm setting that alarm at this time and we're going in and we're taking them to the bathroom. Could be part of that process. And maybe you build in reinforcement for when they wake up in the morning. Did you wake up and have dry pants? Oh my gosh, dry pants. This is awesome. Let's get your special book or whatever the reward chosen is. Our end result, right? Everybody wants to know, when is the child fully toilet trained? What does that mean? When are we 100% successful here? When accidents no longer happen, for the most part, I would say, that 99.99%, because obviously we do have our moments and we do have things happen. It could be when he or she can go at very least 1 hour, if not 2 before going again. Kind of think about that typical schedule that we may follow or that the school may follow. When does the class typically take all the kids to the bathroom? Are they able to do that? Or is it when he or she can tell you they have to go? Or maybe they just get up and go on their own into the bathroom. I definitely have had students that just get up and they go, or at home parents, they just get up from the couch and they go into the bathroom now because they know what's going on here. What if your child has limited or no communication, or they can't or won't tell you they have to go? Using that schedule and using a timer or a visual support is always helpful. So you may have to stick to that for a while and think of ways to fade it back much, much later in the process. Or maybe they just are a schedule kid and that's what you end up having to do. You could have your child wear a watch or use a timer on his or her communication device or iPad. There actually are watches that are specifically focused towards toileting. They're called Potty Watches, or you have a watch that you can set an alarm, even just like the cheap, couple of dollar Walmart watches. You can have buzz, and that will help to signify, oh, time to go. And you have to teach that a little bit. So you put that on and you set that as part of the process. Watch buzzes, I take them, and eventually they learn when this goes off, this is what it's for. Or if you're using the communication device or a tablet or something, maybe it's an alarm that goes off and you make, Siri say time for bathroom or something like that, or time for toilet, or let's go to the bathroom, or whatever type of program or app you can use that maybe will help with that. Work on increasing consistent or independent communication via sign, icons, communication device, verbal, any type of modeling you can. Pointing to the bathroom, even grabbing you by the hand and taking you, whatever ways you can continue to model and show what's going on is always helpful. What if my child will only go to the bathroom on one toilet or in a certain bathroom? I would suggest maybe even trying different toilets from the beginning. So maybe you're doing some of this downstairs and then suddenly we go upstairs. That way they don't just concretely learn this toilet is only for me to go to the bathroom and I can never go anywhere else. Include that in the social story. If you're doing that social story, social narrative, I can pee on the potty upstairs. I can pee on the potty at grandma's house. I can pee on the potty at Target. I can, and do those different things. Maybe you have to build in special reinforcement for using the bathroom outside of the regular home setting. I've had a couple students on my caseload that, they're fine going at home, but they would not go in public anywhere. And the parents are like, well, what if we're doing an outing and a lot of errands and they have to go? I don't want an accident. I don't want them to have to wear pull-ups. So we built in if I go to the bathroom at Target, I earn a cookie from, the Starbucks counter or whatever that might be. And we work on that skill specifically as we found that was the issue. As far as resources, I've mentioned a few ways to find these things and create these things. Google is amazing, right? We can do image searches for anything and everything. For your toilet icons, for icons to go on that first then schedule, to show what they are earning. You can also use the actual item and just plop the actual item on your little first then schedule too, or hold it up, first bathroom, then cookie. Creating things in Microsoft Word, using clip art, using board maker. Again, a dry erase board or just a little piece of paper. You don't have to have anything fancy. If you don't have, again, a laminator, a Velcro, the fancy stuff you see from school, don't worry about that. That's okay. You can use things like poster board, construction paper, take actual pictures. Again, anything you think of that your child would respond to. Or ask, if your child does go to school or has an ABA team at home or something like that, ask them what they respond to more successfully in that setting. Hey, what do you think if I use this? Or what about using this type of picture? Or could you help me with this? Or, reach out to your team and see what they can help you create as well. What are some additional tips? Be as supportive and positive as possible. Praise even the smallest successes. So even if you took your child to the bathroom and literally a couple drops came out, count that as a success, especially at the beginning, because you want them to know that this is a good thing and it makes you so proud and they can still earn and it's great and it's wonderful. Consistency is key. So again, if it's, you make sure you do it this way, dad does it this way. If grandma or grandpa are babysitting, hey, here's the plan. Here's what we're doing. Everywhere we go, we're going to make sure we try to go to the bathroom here. Be persistent, right? Keep pushing, keep trying. That's what's going to get us through. Yes, it's going to be difficult at the beginning, but keep on the path and it will eventually set in. Be patient. Again, some catch on real quick. Some it takes a while. Some we have to keep going to the drawing board 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Additional tips with your language. Don't ask, hey, do you have to go to the bathroom? Can we go to the bathroom? Tell them it's time for a bathroom. Make it part of the process. Determine with, your family or your team, are we using potty? Are we using bathroom? Are we saying toilet? What are the terminology that we're using? That way everybody's consistent too, because believe it or not, sometimes the verbiage we use is what can help the process be successful or not so much. Okay, I feel like I went through that pretty fast. There's a lot going on there, but I noticed we had a lot of questions popping through. So I guess we can go ahead and go to those, Wendy?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We have several. Excuse me. One father asked, are there any recommendations for a child who gets on the toilet and holds his urine until he gets his diaper on?
Oh, this plays into they're very smart. They know, right? I definitely have had plenty of students that will hold it all day at school. And then it's like the second we put the pull-up on to get them on the bus, that's when they go. So similar idea. Here are a couple different things. I would say looking at increasing that reinforcement, increasing that process and that motivation to go, increasing the fluid intake and time on the toilet to see if you can catch that. Even trying again to keep the underwear on underneath the pull-up idea, because maybe that will encourage the feeling the wetness against the body with that as well. Let me think. Trying to think what else I did not cover with that. If you're seeing that it tends to be a certain time of day, like when you put the pull-up back on, maybe if it's before bed or whatever, again, and maybe try to extend that time a little bit. I think I mentioned before, have them sit on the toilet with the pull-up on, or perhaps like, again, I know it sounds strange, but cutting that little slit in the pull-up so that maybe they're comfortable going in the pull-up, but some of it starts to go in the toilet. So you kind of count that as a success because it's rewarding that behavior. And then you slowly fade that out too. So hopefully those are a couple of successful options.
Okay. One gentleman said we use a timer for a thinking chair when he does something wrong, almost like a timeout chair.
Oh,
Would you
okay.
recommend using the same timer for toiletring, or is that too much?
You could perhaps use a different, like maybe it's a different timer sound if you're using something on your phone, or maybe it's just more something that's for you. Like maybe you set an alarm or a timer on your phone so you know when to take them. Yeah, you definitely want to differentiate those. There's tons of different timer apps out there as well that are free that you can download, some even with different visually stimulating things. Or if you buy like a kitchen timer or something, maybe that's the one that you stick one of the potty icons on top of. That way they know this is the potty timer. So they kind of see it and know where it's coming from.
Right. A mother asks, my son doesn't care about being wet or soiled. He's 4 and he just doesn't care. Any suggestions?
Mm-hmm. That could be something where you could be teaching the concepts of wet and dry. I don't know that I totally mentioned that. I mentioned wet and dry checks, but maybe even a period of exposure of like, have them put their hand in a cup of water. This is wet. This one's dry, and kind of teaching expressive and receptive identification of those concepts could be something. But then going into as well, like doing more frequent of those dry pants checks I was mentioning, like literally have them, oh my gosh, your pants are dry, like feel the pull up or feel the underwear and celebrating and praising them. And maybe you're doing, for a while, you're just doing dry pants checks reinforcement before you even start the toilet training. So they get excited about staying dry. And that's something that's really cool to them.
Thank you. How do you reward a nonverbal child who can't or won't communicate any desires?
Yes. I would say, like, so as far as like communicating desires, like what they want or what they would like, I think this is more of a holding those items up. Maybe, do you want this or this? Or exposing them to an entire bin of something and just seeing what they engage with and interact with. There is something that I did in grad school was a process of what's called a preference assessment. So there was like formal things that we did, but one of the options was just to continually expose them to different things, like literally hand them a certain toy and see what they did with it. And you could kind of make your own observation of, they seem into this, they don't seem into this, this is making them giggle, this one they're afraid of, that type of idea, and just kind of take note of, hey, maybe this could work. Even as you go to the bathroom, it could be an in the moment decision versus a, what do you want to earn for peeing on the potty decision. So literally go into the bathroom, what do you want right here, right now? Or after they go, open up that treasure box. Oh my gosh, good job going pee on the potty. Let's pick something, so there could be a couple different options there. And again, think way outside the box. I have kids at school, this is outside of toileting, but just to give an example of being creative when you're like, I don't know what this kid's motivated by. I had a kid that loved to play with the highlighters and the pens and pencils in our secretary's desk. For some reason, office supplies were really cool to him. I had a kid that liked putting a sticker on the front of the attendance book at the front of the classroom. I don't know why, but it was something he liked, so we went with it. We have a kid that earns at the end of the day getting to help with bus duties. So he gets to help, hey, so-and-so bus is here, or he'll call a kid's name. One kid is motivated by being the janitor, and he literally likes collecting the trash from the classrooms and pushing the big janitor trash can around. So literally anything like that, or, oh, you get to be the one that, wipes off the dry erase board. I mean, just think of any really random activity that you can think of. Maybe your kid likes the sound of the dog treats in the dog bowl, so you let them pour it in so they can hear the clinking. I don't know. It could be something so random that you wouldn't think would be a typical reinforcer, but try it out and see how they react. Lots of reinforcement stuff. I did my master's thesis on preference assessments and reinforcements, so that could be a whole other webinar just in itself.
It sounds like we all just need to be really creative and very flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When I was talking about some of my troubleshooting ideas, some of those things I mentioned as I was doing them, like, are we really doing this right now? Like, is this really happening? But I was willing to try anything to get success. Because as I said at the beginning, this is such a huge thing in our lives that, like, we probably took for granted because we're like, well, I just learned how to go and I went, it wasn't a big deal. But when you think about, the cost of pull-ups, especially as a child gets older and they have to get kind of the more adult pull-ups, those end up being a lot more expensive. So it's something like that. And it's that sense of independence for the child when you start to see them get excited about going on their own and doing something themselves. So I try anything just to get that success. And if it seems crazy, okay, call me crazy, but I got the success, so it worked,
Are there any more? Are there any more questions?
Let's see. I see some questions about just the downloadable files and where to find them. So it's more logistics.
Right. We'll have all the downloadable files and documents and charts on the Autism website, probably early next week.
Okay. I see also, will the full recording be available afterwards? I believe that was going to be posted.
That will be next week as well.
Okay.
We have a lot of moving parts to put together for that to happen. So next week.
Definitely. And as you guys can see there, the last slide that I have up, I have left my email, and that is my work phone number. So if for some reason you do have some questions that come up after this, you can certainly reach out and email me, or if you lose track of this, you can contact Wendy through the Autism Society too, and she could put me in touch as well. Or maybe you do say, hey, you know what, this was a nice, this covered so many different ideas. I would really like a more in-depth presentation on reinforcement, or I would like a more in-depth presentation on this certain piece part thing. Certainly reach out for that as well. And maybe that's something that we kind of do a follow-up on or something like that. I'm always happy to help however I can.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica, for bringing your time and your talents and your information. This was very helpful.
Good.
We usually ask Jessica back once a year. Oh, wait a minute. One more question.
Oh, yeah.
My child is scared to go on the toilet. He will sit, but only go but only goes in the diaper. He literally has accidentally spilled some urine in the toilet, but has been shaking and crying and never attempted again. He is on meds to go and still only goes BM once a week, only in pull-ups at a particular location.
Okay, so as far as with the accidentally piece, I would still consider that as like accidentally on purpose it happened. So count that as kind of a success. But it sounds like too, maybe even just being careful with your rewards and your excitement. I mean, I mentioned being excited, but some kids that I've worked with, they're like, no, because they are stuck in their ways and they are comfortable with the pull up and they don't want that to happen. So they don't want to be praised. So maybe it's a matter of just being very careful with the way that is happening as well. Even as far as wanting to stick with the diaper and stick with the pull-up and things like that, I had to reward a student just for purely changing into underwear and taking off the pull-up. That's where we started. So even just building that piece, we don't have to think all the way to part Z here. We might be at part A, and that's literally giving up the pull-up at this point. So maybe that's what it is at first. So that could be where your reward is for a while. Nice job. You changed into the underwear, even if it was for 2 seconds. Cool. That's where we're at right now, right? You may literally have to get that far. I'm with a student too right now that will maybe kind of halfway sit on the toilet for 2 seconds. So, working on that. I see a follow-up with that of holding urine for a long time. Even working with that increase of the fluids and kind of increasing reward and reinforcement for that, or finding ways to increase the fluid process. Let me see where it says on meds. Okay. And again, that could be something that maybe even further discussion is talked to with the doctor as well to see what else can be encouraged. Or I know it's difficult, but maybe taking a break for a little while and coming back to it can be something that you might have to do. Maybe right now, okay, you know what, it's not happening, getting upset and things like that too. We don't want this to be a traumatic process. We want it to be successful. So if we're having a bit of an issue right now, maybe it's just we take a step back, or we kind of keep a pair of underwear out here and there, and we just kind of do gradual exposure versus sit down and do the process. So I hope that helps.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, all those materials can be found at info@autismakron.org. Again, thank you, Jessica. Everybody have a wonderful night tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.